Hello everybody, my name is Joey Armijo and I am a psychic and also a musician. And since I'm a musician, it's no surprise that clairaudience and telepathy are the things that come very natural to me. Whereas I had to definitely work on my clairvoyance and work on my seeing and that kind of thing. So I wanted to give everybody some tips and tools to hopefully help you um, further along your psychic hearing. So here it goes. So step one is setting a clear intention. If you want to talk to your spirit guides, then just make that intention very clear. Say it out loud, and or write it down on a piece of paper and say, I want to connect with my spirit guides, and I want to have guidance from them. Or if your intention is to talk to a dear loved one that has passed on, make that intention known, just very clear to the universe. I want to contact so and so and talk to them about blah blah blah, or just talk to them and have a conversation. Most of the time, people don't realize that spirit is actually talking back all of the time, and it's the universe is always sending us messages, but we usually don't hear it. We're usually wrapped up in our own world and in the things that we're doing to actually take a moment to sit down and process those messages. Or some people are just ignoring them, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Society doesn't teach us how to talk to the other side, so it's okay if you're a little confused and need some help. That's what this video is for, so that's good. Okay, so the second step is to actually practice your psychic hearing. So what I recommend doing is finding a very quiet room where you can be alone and lock the door, and also be able to turn off the lights. I like to sit in the bathroom sometimes with one candle, and that way it's just really dark and you can kind of get in your zone. Then you will want to get some earplugs, and they don't have to be very expensive. You can buy them from Walgreens or from Walmart and put them in your ears. The reason that you do this is so that you block out any physical sound that might be going into your eardrums, so that you can really start to listen internally, because your psychic hearing will come from inside of you. Actually, it'll come from inside of your mind. And I recommend practicing this every day, and you'll start to notice that the more that you spend time alone quietly, and the more that you listen to yourself and listen to nothing, listen to silence, the more you will realize that actually silence doesn't exist, and that there's sound inside of silence, and it's kind of interesting and cool. But I'm a musician, so I get really nerdy about sound. So, alright. So, as you're sitting in your quiet bathroom with one candle, just do a quick feelings check or inventory. Just check in with your body, see, how do I feel? Do I feel anxious, or do I feel excited? Does my body feel tense, or does it feel really relaxed and free? And this just helps you be grounded to your body and to pay attention to yourself, because later it's going to help you. And if you can identify how your body is feeling or how you're feeling internally, then it'll be much easier to be able to relax and to slip into that state of relaxation. And then when you're relaxed, you can start to quiet your thoughts and just observe them, and just tell your mind to quiet down and slow down, because a lot of the time our minds are racing from everyday activities and from what we need to do and what we need to accomplish later on. We need to go to the grocery store, we need to pick up the kids from school, so on and so forth. So it'll be good for you to take an inventory of how you're feeling and to be relaxed, and then from there to quiet your thoughts and get your mind really quiet so you can pay attention. So as you're sitting alone in your quiet spot, and you start to get really good at just listening to silence, you will start to notice either a very low hum, which is like your body's frequency, or you start to hear like bells or tones inside of your head. Some people are a little afraid of this because they think this is not normal, but logically, sound is perceived inside of our mind. Um, our eardrums vibrate back and forth, and the pattern of their vibration is interpreted by our brain, and that is what creates sound. So, it wasn't surprising for me to realize that my brain can create its own sound. And ever since I was a little kid, I've heard these really loud tones inside of my head, especially when I get really quiet and I sit alone. I hear literally like an orchestra of 1,000 violins. Or it sounds like thousands of bells being ringing all at the same time inside of my head, and I can hear different pitches inside there. Alright, so during the fourth step, this is where things start to get really interesting and exciting. So at first, your imagination will start to create words and thoughts, and that is perfectly okay. Don't stop it. That's all right. Let your imagination start to make those words, and you'll learn later how to discern between imagination and actual spirit. Your imagination will feel like yourself, and it will feel very flat. It'll feel like nothing. It'll feel like if you took this idea out of a wisp of air, it'll feel like nothing. But a message from spirit will come in charged with a polarity, or charged with an emotion, or charged with an excitement or an idea or something. The better you get at discerning between your own imagination and spirit, the more you'll be able to contact spirit and talk to them more fluently. Imagination is a really cool place because it is raw creative potential, and whether you use that personally and your consciousness creates that, or if spirit is borrowing it and also giving you ideas, it's still creative raw potential. So just pay attention to that. Don't dismiss it. A lot of people get very judgmental about their imagination, and they dismiss their thoughts right away. They say, "Oh, well, I can't be thinking that," or "Oh, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't pertain to what I need to do." It doesn't matter. You're still learning, so just write it down anyway, and you can it'll be fine. You'll learn. So the fifth step is to start writing. Start writing down your thoughts and start writing down whatever is coming to you impulsively. It'll feel like you're trying to shift gears, and you'll feel stuck in between each one, or you'll feel like a little child not able to speak fluently, but that's because you're not used to talking to spirit, and you're not used to talking to yourself, really. So as the more you practice and as you become better at this, you will start to formulate sentences and start making words and start making everything flow better. But don't worry about that right away. It's not going to make sense in the beginning, and that's okay. Don't judge it. Don't worry about it. Just let it flow. The whole point of this is to let things flow and to not get in your own way. Don't let the ego get in the way of the creative mind. An exercise you could do is, what if a spirit is trying to whisper into my ear or trying to tell me a story? And then just write down whatever you hear, and that'll get better in time. Also, make sure not to worry about grammar or spelling or anything like that. It doesn't really matter. What matters is the words, and that you're actually hearing and you're practicing and you're working with your spirit guides or whatever entity that you may want to talk to. And when you first begin doing this process, you'll feel like a little kid. You'll feel like a child, barely learning how to write or barely learning how to talk. You'll start speaking in fragments. That's how I started learning. Like, I ran home. I need tissue. I like my cat. But the more you practice, it starts to flow and it starts to become more like adult speech. So don't judge it and just let it flow. That's the whole point of this. And Spirit is giving you little fragments for a reason, because it's teaching you, and it's teaching you how to listen, and you're also learning, and you're figuring it out as you're going along. So you don't want to get overwhelmed with long paragraphs or start channeling a novel. Spirit will give you little pieces of information, and you'll start putting them together and slowly building them just like Legos. And after you start getting really good at writing down the messages and it starts to become more fluid, then you'll start be able to verbally expressing the messages that Spirit comes. It'll start coming in faster. When that happens, you can start using a voice recorder, even on your phone, or buy a little voice recorder, and start just talking and channeling. Just remember not to disrupt yourself and not to get in your own way, but to let it just flow and to allow it to happen and to be receptive. Okay? And most of us in our society aren't used to being receptive and just letting it happen. But that's something that you can work on, and it'll come naturally with a little bit of time and a little bit of practice. Just remember to be patient with yourself and not to get too frustrated with what's happening. That is the human condition, is to want to do things right away and to be really good at them the first time, but that's not going to happen, and that's not realistic. And as adults, we forget that that's not the case all the time, that we have to break things down in little steps and take baby steps towards our goal. When Spirit starts to talk to you, it's actually going to sound like your own imagination. It's going to sound like yourself. If you're reading a news article and you hear your own voice inside of your head, that's what it sounds like at first. But the more you develop it, and the more you practice, and the more you become talking to Spirit, you will actually create different voices inside of your head. And you're not going crazy, I promise you, because that's what I thought at first. It would be similar to reading a fictional book, and you have several different characters, and you make up a voice for each character. That's what you will hear in your head when you start to talk to different spirits and to different guides. But usually they sound like yourself, and that's why it's really important for you to be able to discern between yourself and your own thoughts, and then separate that from Spirit and Spirit's thoughts and what Spirit is giving you and the guidance it's giving you. One of the entities that I talk to the most is the Egyptian goddess Isis, and usually she doesn't give me very direct information, but she does give me words of encouragement a lot. For her, she has a very unique voice that I've created inside of my mind, or as has been revealed to me, so to speak. So I have a singular voice for her, but I also talk to a collective, and I talk to the Pleiadian collective, and what they sound like is 100 people talking at the same time. Similar to, let's say if you go into a big room like a church, and the congregation is saying the same prayer all at the same time, and you can hear it. It sounds like multiple people all saying the same thing. That's what they sound like to me in my head. But most of the time it comes in my own voice. The last step is to reread what you wrote or to listen to what you just recorded, and you may be surprised at the messages that come through, because during the process when you're actually channeling, you will be half conscious and half not. So you won't be completely aware of what's coming through, and so when you go back and you reread it, then you're reading for comprehension, and you probably will surprise yourself, and that's when it gets really cool. And then you'll be more motivated to channel and to practice more. Once you've practiced and you get really good at your psychic hearing, you will start to notice something really odd and really cool. When you're going about your daily life and you're, let's say, at the grocery store, you'll start to notice that you will hear the thoughts of other people. Now, that might scare some people or some individuals. In general, our thoughts are not private. What you're thinking about in the line at the bank is not really private because it still gets projected out into the universe. Only thoughts that we personally designate as private self-thoughts are private, and those are locked within our consciousness. But other thoughts are not so much. So you can be standing in the line of the grocery store and totally hear what somebody is thinking about, or hear their grocery list inside of their head. Most thoughts are not private. Usually our thoughts are, they're electrical impulses or they're signals, right? And so they get projected into our electromagnetic field or our aura, and that can be perceived by others or perceived by the universe. And so they're not exactly private. So you'll start to finish people's sentences and you'll start to hear what they're thinking. And that is telepathy, and that's where things get kind of really cool. Don't be afraid of it. It's just natural. It's a natural, innate human ability. Most people just don't haven't developed it. And that's when things kind of get really exciting, but also kind of weird, but also cool.